So Ricky,
Oh, what's up? How are you?
I'm good, man. Long time no here or see.
Yeah. How's everything been?
Been good, man. Just staying busy. My audio coming in all right?
Yeah, that's the nice thing about having podcasters on. They always have good mics, good audio, typically good podcast voices. You got one of those great, deep podcast voices.
Appreciate it, man. So do you.
I've been told, but unfortunately, we all hate the sound of our own voices. So I don't hear it. When I hear my own voice, I cringe, but I've been told that it's decent.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I think I got used to hearing mine, and I done some audiobooks and such. Sometimes I go back and listen to it, and I'm just used to it by now.
You've done audiobooks?
Yeah, I did David McGowan's audiobook on the Lincoln assassination. I think it's like 6 hours long. It was a painstaking endeavor, man, correcting mistakes, and I still have mistakes on it. Maybe at some point I'll redo it all over again. But yeah, that was quite a fun endeavor to take on, and got me down the Lincoln assassination rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, that's one of those conspiracies I haven't really dug too deep into, and when I did, it was a long time ago because it was always intriguing the similarities between the JFK assassination and the Lincoln assassination. There's like, there's I remember back in the day seeing like a graph where it showed like all the coincidences between the two. Did you guys cover any of that stuff?
Yeah, man, I'm a self-proclaimed Lincoln assassination researcher these days, and I've read, I want to say, about 10 books, and from normies, from official narrative standpoints to conspiratorials. And out of every researcher that I've looked up, I think David McGowan is by far the best, man. He just points out the absurdities to it all. And the reason people believe in conspiracies is because you start seeing these coincidences pile on. And at some point, all right, one coincidence, yeah, I suppose that's possible. Two coincidences, yeah. But once it's over and over and over and over again, you're like, all right, man, there's obviously way more than what the official story or narrative tells us. And that's how it is with the Lincoln assassination. I know even with my own listeners, as soon as I start talking Lincoln, they kind of cringe. They're not really fascinated, but I do shows because I want to do them, and it fascinates me. And the reason I cover it is because it relates to today in many aspects. The Trump assassination attempt has many Lincoln connections as well, turning his head at the wrong moment. Lincoln did the same thing, but it killed him. But Trump does it and he survives it. Once you study things from the past and you see them playing out in the modern day, at least for me, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, this whole week I've been going down the Mongolian Empire. I've been fascinated with the Mongolian history for a long time, but for whatever reason, this week I really was going in. And then it got me into the story of the Silk Road. And during the times of the Silk Road, the Strait of Hormuz was key. And all these years later, it's still, I mean, it's on, front page news. Everyone's talking about it. And so all these events, all these stories, they're all connected, man. And I don't have the answers to any of these things, but I find it interesting how everything connects in one way, shape, form, or another.
Well, like they say, history doesn't always repeat, but it rhymes in many cases. You see similarities between all these events. And yeah, I find it fascinating that people aren't intrigued with the oldest of conspiracies, because what you learn is this stuff's been going on forever. A lot of times people in the conspiracy community, they talk about 9/11, they talk about OKC, they talk about the JFK assassination, but these are all kind of recent events. But like you're talking about, you can go all the way back to Lincoln or maybe even further back and find all
Julius Caesar, buddy.
Caesar, yeah. So it's, yeah, and first of all, who cares what the listeners want? I mean, like you said, we do this, it's a passion project. We do this because we enjoy it. And if we stop doing things we enjoy that we find intriguing because, some listener doesn't like it or whatever, and it's going to stop being fun. And then if it stops being fun, we're going to stop enjoying it. We're going to probably stop doing it because obviously financially isn't why we're doing it. So it's like you have to enjoy what you do. And I find it fascinating what people are intrigued with, because I think a lot of times when you meet somebody, you're like, oh, okay, I feel like I get them. And then you find out they have like this just intriguement with this topic that's really fascinating. You're like, oh, really? You've been down that rabbit hole? Oh, you're into that conspiracy, or you're in that historical event. And so for people listening who don't know much about the Lincoln assassination, what initially sparked your interest into the assassination, and then what kind of, I guess, sold you on the fact that there's more than meets the eye.
Yeah, so that goes back to David McGowan. I tend to model my current worldview after the late, great David McGowan. For those that are not familiar with David McGowan, he was a legitimate journalist, and he passed away in 2015, a very short time after he exposed the Boston Marathon bombing. And for those familiar with the Boston Marathon bombing, a lot of people find weird stuff with the stories. But David McGowan took it even further. He's like, I don't think anyone died. And he did a now infamous podcast. It's like a 3-hour podcast on the Caravan to Midnight, which I uploaded on my Odyssey. It's on my Odyssey. And where he goes picture by picture by picture by picture by picture, showing you how, and then he picks out the people in the scenes. This person later says that she lost her leg, and here she is giving out waters to people. How's she doing that with a busted leg? And the fact that a lot of these EMTs didn't have any blood stains. I mean, there was supposed limbs and body. It sounds crazy. It sounds cockamamie. I remember when the Boston Marathon bombing happened, I was on my way to LA visiting my sister-in-law that had terminal cancer, and that was the last time we saw her. And on that weekend back, that's when we heard the Boston Marathon bombing. And it's just like so many events. You hear these stories, these clips on the news, and your heart wrenches. Oh, poor innocent people. And you feel it's just like 9/11, man. When you believe the official story, you just see clips. But most people never go any deeper than that. This is the same with the Lincoln assassination, the Boston Marathon bombing. You only see headlines, and a lot of people then develop hard feelings or hard beliefs towards just clips and headlines without having gone any further or any deeper. And then when you do go deeper and you come out with a completely opposite version of what the official narrative tells you, you're the one that's crazy, even though you've gone super deep. And so going back to David McGowan, he exposed that. That's what initially interested me into David McGowan. And if you go to his website, it's called a Center for an Informed America, which is a play on CIA, a Center for an Informed America.com. And he has a lot of his blogs there. He wrote the book, The Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, which a lot of people talk about. Rogan talks about it, but for whatever reason, never mentions the name David McGowan. I've been keeping track about that for many, many years. I don't know why he's averse to saying David McGowan's name. I have no idea, but that's a fact. But going back to David McGowan, if you go to his website, he has a book on the Lincoln assassination. And when I first started reading that blog, I never cared for it, man. I believe the official story. John Wilkes Booth, famous actor, he hated Lincoln so much. We always hear the word hate, hate, hate. This is another common denominator with a lot of these events. Hate is what motivated John Wilkes Booth to kill Lincoln, going into the box, gets slashed by Henry Rathbone, the other person inside that box with Lincoln and his wife and fiance, jumps out the balcony. Most people will say he broke his leg when he jumped down. Other people dispute it. Lifts up his knife. Most people say he yelled Sic Semper Tyrannis, the South is avenged. Other people say he didn't say anything and he hauled ass. And that is the story that I was taught as a kid, and I believed. I never, again, like I just mentioned, I never bothered to look into it any further. David McGowan, in the first couple chapters, he's giving you all these crazy coincidences. And you're like, damn, man, the story, even though I believe it now that it's complete bullshit, it's truly fascinating. There's so many elements from Lincoln's son. John Wilkes Booth, Booth had a brother named Edwin Booth. Edwin Booth, at some point prior to the assassination, he was by the train tracks. I'm sorry, Todd Lincoln, which was Abraham Lincoln's son. He was by the train tracks, and he was about to fall into the train tracks, and Edwin Booth just so happens to be there and saves him. Another fascinating thing is, we are told John Wilkes Booth was fiancé with Lucy Hale. That was his fiancée. Turns out Todd Lincoln was knocking the boots with Lucy Hale, the same person. Once you start seeing, and I'm just giving you little tiny pieces, man. I do hours and hours and hours of content into this. You start seeing how small of a world, even back then, DC was. Everyone's hanging out kind of like Epstein today. How Epstein is connected to the Clintons, to Trump. Everyone was partying with Epstein. And you see the same vibe, the same essence back in the 80s, 1960s. And that to me is what really fascinates me, man. McGowan's breakdown is what really got me motivated and looking into it even deeper. And the wild thing is, I've been able to expand on a lot of his original findings now. You know, stuff that he proposed, through more research, I was able to expand on it and give more thoughts. And I don't want to take full credit for that, because obviously McGowan is the one that laid the foundation for me to get there. But at the same time, had he still been alive, he probably would have vocalized those same findings that I have made. You know what I'm saying? So I want to make sure people understand, I'm not trying to take any glory. I'm giving all that to the late great David McGowan.
Well, I'm curious if Rogan doesn't bring up his name when referring to his book due to maybe people just, or maybe he's just motivating people to check out the book and giving credibility to the book, and maybe doesn't want to link the author to it. Because I've seen other podcasters do that, where sometimes they'll reference a book, but they don't agree with that author on other work, so they'll just reference a book and not the author, because maybe they're like, well, I don't want people not to go check out the book because this guy wrote it, or because they think he's a kook or whatever. So sometimes it works in the favor of just getting people to check out the book without judging the author before the book. You get what I'm saying? So that might be a thing. Now, for people listening who maybe don't know the motives, right? So you got into some of the coincidences, and I always tell my friends, I'm like, we'll be talking about certain, of course, like all of us podcasters, we're the conspiracy theorist friend in our group of friends. So but I'm always telling my friends, I'm like, how many coincidences before it's not a coincidence? You know, we'll be talking about things, and I'll be like, okay, well, that's kind of unique, and kind of curious that happened, or that's a weird coincidence, or that's where it's like, well, how many before you guys start believing that maybe there is something more than the mainstream narrative? What's your thoughts on like the motive? What was the motive behind the Lincoln assassination?
So if you go to my Odyssey channel, I have a Lincoln playlist. So anyone that really maybe that this piqued their curiosity, check out the playlist. A lot of the podcasts and shows that I've done on the Lincoln assassination are there. I talked to James Perloff, had a little mini debate. Even though he's a conspiracy theorist, my views are considered a little bit more different. My version of what happened on the Lincoln assassination is completely different than anything you ever heard on any damn book. And so that was a good discussion. If you're an enthusiast, that I encourage you. Same thing with Don Jeffries. Him and I had a little bit of a back and forth. But as far as motive, I believe the world of 1865 was not very much different than what it is today. Technologically, of course, we have computers. They had the telegraph. But the principles of how government ran things, very, very similar. So the official narrative tells us that hate is what drove Wilkes Booth. Then you'll have other people say, well, it was probably a Southern plot. That holds no water, because the South already knew that they were losing. They wanted the war to end a lot sooner than what it did on April 9th of 1865. And months before April 9th, it was already decided that the war was done. So they were already engineering plans on what was going to proceed. And a lot of the radical Republicans, which was the party of the North, which ideologically speaking were more lefties, and the Southern Democrats were actually more ideologically right-wingers. This is why I'm like, I'm not against, or I'm not for any party, man. When you see them switching sides, and they still do it today, I don't ascribe to any political ideology. But
not to interrupt you, but just another example of that. People forget Lyndon Johnson was put on the card to help get the Southern Democratic vote. I mean, it's funny, like you said, how it's switched, because now the South, and you think conservatives. Back in the day, it was more Democratic. So it's interesting how the views of the party have changed, and who relates with each party has changed throughout the years.
Yeah, it's funny because I live out here in Southern Florida, and you'll see a lot of people with Confederate flags. South rise again, like that kind of stuff. I'm like, so you're a big fan of the Democrats? And their face changes, and that's a part of the history that both sides don't really want to fully embrace. Because you have to admit that your party switched sides, and they've done it over and over. And this is what makes me lean that when we're kids, we're told that the president has ultimate control. He's the world leader. His word is the law of the land. They run everything. And I'm of the mindset that no, there's puppet masters that tell these guys what to do. And if you don't fall in line, you get JFK. You know what I'm saying? You won't survive an assassination attempt in Butler if you fall out of line. It's all nonsense. And so getting back to the Lincoln days, again, it wasn't very different than what it is today in that regard. A lot of the radical Republicans in Lincoln's party, they wanted to be harsh. They wanted to lay down the hammer on the South. You know, like, how dare you guys raise up? You guys are going to punish. We're going to make you suffer for daring to rise up against us. And Lincoln had other plans. He wanted to ease into, getting back together as a nation. That doesn't mean I think Lincoln was a good guy, because the dude did a lot of shady shit that a lot of people ignore. Because since that time, 160 years later, Lincoln has been lionized, a saintly guy that loved black people. And when you study what he actually thought about black people, he didn't think they were on par with white folk, for example. He also, under his administration, habeas corpus was suspended, and no-knock warrants were a thing. In 1860s, people talk about how their constitutional rights are being trampled upon today. That shit was going on in the 1860s. So while I'm saying this, I want people to realize I don't think Lincoln was a good guy. He was just another puppet. But he was of the mindset that after the Civil War was to finish, that he was going to take it easy on him. And the people in his cabinet were like, nah, man, we need to get rid of this guy. So that's why I believe that he was taken out. There was no Southern plot. There was probably some Southern elites. I do believe Southern elites that were conspiring with the Northerners to take this guy out because he was going to be a hindrance to their plans, moving on with Reconstruction, for sure. But the lower level folk, nah, man. And this is, unfortunately, when you look at all wars are of bankers. It's these people up top wanting us and our kids to go fight their own wars. You know what I mean? And the Civil War in reality was no much different. So that's just a quick thing as far as the motive, as why they would want him out of there.
Yeah, that's also true in regards to our historical figures. A lot of people we celebrate are typically not as great of people as we try to paint them as. You see it a lot of times with, even Martin Luther King. I mean, obviously in my personal opinion, and I've had James D'Eugenio on to break it down, but his assassination is very sketchy and probably was an inside job and to kill him. And obviously the FBI head, Edgar Hoover, was threatening him, and a lot of people wanted him to shut up and go away. But he was a womanizer, right? So same thing with JFK. There's all these things. They're flawed human beings. And to hit on the point that who runs things, I mean, could it be any more obvious than the last administration when Biden couldn't even talk or walk, or was referring to people that were dead or not in the room? And just all that crazy. I mean, it was, if you didn't believe that the president had no authority before that, there's no way you can deny it now. I mean, obviously, somebody was running the show and it wasn't him. And I think that's always been the case. I think in a lot of times, even if we believe somebody's intentions are in the right place, like, for example, somebody like Dennis Kucinich or Ron Paul, these people that a lot of times people in the alternative community praise because they've been anti-war and they've been at least consistent with their views. I'm always curious, if they get in office, if something similar to every other president would happen, where either their family will be threatened or they'll be threatened, or they realize they just have very little pull. And when you look at the people that hang out, you talked about Washington, D.C., a lot of these advisors, consultants, the Podestas, the Kissingers, I mean, these people hang around with Republicans and Democrats. They don't care what party you're from. They're influencing decision making, and the person who's in office for 4 years isn't going to change the grand plan of the empire. And that's just the way the world works. And I think with the Epstein files, a lot more people are becoming open to the idea that these people at the highest levels aren't just liars and money hungry and power hungry, but they're pure evil. They're legitimately evil in regards to obviously the child trafficking, the pedophilia, all that type of stuff. But I mean, these are people that, like, you have all the money in the world, you have all the power in the world, you have all the exotic vacations and resorts and properties and cars. What's next? What's the next fix for the drug addict, right? What's the next fix to that whatever your little heart desires you can have. And I always reference this movie, and I don't know if you remember it, but there was that movie Hostel. It was like a horror movie back in the day. And for people who maybe are on the younger side and didn't see it, it was really good. It was disturbing, but that's kind of what you want in a horror movie. But it was really good because I remember watching it, and I remember telling my at the time, I think, girlfriend, I wasn't married yet, but I remember telling my wife, I'm like, hey, this is kind of probably what happens in real life. And what the movie was, it was these people, these Americans, I believe they're Americans, who were going on these European vacations or whatever, but people were being taken and kidnapped. And then you just see these scenes of like these kids who are getting kidnapped, being tortured. And you didn't really know why or by who or what. But spoiler alert, what ended up happening was it exposed the fact that this torturing was really a paid service, that these elite billionaires who have all this money and have all these resources were basically paying for the service of like, hey, I want a blue-eyed, blonde-hair Eastern European girl, and they'll get it for you, and then you could do whatever you want to them. And they would, like, I think at one point they were like blow torching a kid or whatever, something crazy. I mean, now I think about it, I'm like, I'm not sure that movie would come out today. It's probably too close to reality for some people, but I'm like, that's probably how this shit works. You know, I don't know if you saw that audio that just came out recently of the Podesta, well, or no, it was the Anthony Weiner audio that came out. I mean, I struggled to listen to it. I mean, I'm one of those people, and I don't know how you are, and I'd like to get your opinion, but like when you go down these rabbit holes, it's weird because like some people would rather be like, I can't see it, I can't watch it, I can't hear it. But to me, it's like I need to know about the world we live in. And no matter how painful it is, no matter how scary or evil it is, I want to know the reality of things. And if that means I have to deal with this, if this exists in our world, I want to know it exists. And listening to that audio, it just, because even if it was fake, even if it wasn't real, even if it was manipulated, you know, audio like that exists somewhere. And that was the part. It wasn't so much about the audio, because again, I don't know if it's real, and I don't know, you know, if anybody really confirmed that it was. But you hear stories about Anthony Weiner's laptop. You hear stories about FBI agents that went missing or died afterwards, or police officers who end up retiring early after seeing it. You know, just these people who saw what was on the laptop, and then, you know, these weird things happen to them. And it seems realistic because Anthony Weiner is a weirdo. I mean, it's not that hard to believe he was doing weird shit in the privacy of his own home, because he was doing weird shit in the public realm with freaking dick pics and like selfies shirtless and all this weird stuff. So it's like, but do you ever, when you go down these rabbit holes, do you ever pump the brakes, or are you like me? You're like, I want to know exactly what's going on. I don't care how disturbing it is.
Yeah, I'm the same way, because we are living in a time where there is literally tons of information out there. I'm of the mindset these days where a lot of the shit we see, like if I see it on the news, on the mainstream news, I automatically deem it as bullshit. And upon further investigation, I'll be like, okay, maybe there's something to it. But my mindset isn't to accept it right away. No, this is bullshit, because we know that the media is controlled. Operation Mockingbird, it's been like that for a long time. If we see it on the news, it's because they want us to see it. It's not by accident. I don't believe in leaks. Even the Julian Assange WikiLeaks, I don't trust Julian Assange. I'm going to say that. I know that's sacrilegious to say, but there's so much bullshit with a lot of these characters. And we get fed so much nonsense. A lot of people will say, well, Weezy, you doubt everything. Yeah, I do. I do. I'm skeptical of absolutely everything. And some people are like, well, that makes it hard to see reality. Well, that's the point. I want to know what's real and not bullshit. I don't want to go along with something just because it sounds good, just because it's pleasing. If the truth is hard and it's painful, I want to fucking know it, because I want to live in reality. So when people want to accuse me of this and that, then I guess people call me black-pilled all the time. For the longest time, even when I would criticize Trump, oh, you're just black-pilled. Trump is going to change everything. And I'm like, no, fuck that guy. How is it me as a garbage man? Someone, I do these podcasts just for fun. I don't make no goddamn money off of this. I have a passion for it. How is it me that works my 50, 60 hours a week and I come home smelling like shit. How is it that I knew Trump was a fucking scumbag before he got elected? And yet these podcasters with millions of subscribers, millions of views, tons of followers on Twitter and all this shit that know every politician's name in DC and give breakdowns like a Dave Smith. And how is it that they didn't know this shit? This is what drives me nuts, because I'm not a genius. I don't claim to be a savant of by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a fucking idiot. But if I know this, how the fuck do these guys not see it? And that's what sometimes you hear my passion when I talk about it, because it does drive me nuts. So it makes me skeptical of a lot of these people with big accounts, man. I'm being honest, because again, how is it that I know more than these guys that not to trust Trump before he was elected? I already knew about Trump University before he was elected. How is someone going to be running a Ponzi scheme and then that defrauded tons of people, and he ended up paying $25 million to settle the damn suit? How is it that this guy became president of the United States? And going back to what you just said, or your first question was, I was called blackpilled for talking shit, and now I'm seeing a lot of people like, damn, you know what? Maybe I didn't vote for this. I thought we were going to get a different version of Trump. I thought Trump was really gonna. I'm like, it drives me nuts, because I told you motherfuckers this years ago, man. This is why I started my podcast. And I think a lot of people, even intelligent people like a Dave Smith, I think he's super intelligent. No question. I'm not saying he's an idiot. Super intelligent. But they focus in on a lot of these official narrative pieces. They read every damn clipping that comes out on the New York Times. They're on top of that. Their hand is, their fingers on the pulse. They know all these names. I couldn't tell you most of those politicians' names. I don't know shit about them. I'm being straight up. But I know there's a bunch of fuckery afoot. And to me, that's the view I take, where I know they're lying to me. And I just want to know the truth. And I guess for me to navigate this sea of propaganda, of bullshit, from every side, from Russian propaganda, American propaganda, it's all propaganda. When I hear it, I'm immediately trying to decipher, why are you guys letting me know this? Why are you putting this out there? That's where I'm trying to decipher it, where I think most people, unfortunately, when they hear something, oh, well, it was on the news, that must be a fact. And they go along with it because it's pleasing to their ears. They don't want to accept things like you just said are happening in real life, that there are child trafficking rings, there are kids getting exploited from third world countries. There's people. It sounds cockamamie to the average person because they want to live in a bubble where this shit doesn't happen. I just want to go outside and get my newspaper and read about the sports, and that's it. That's their world. And it's tough, man, because people hear, like, someone that doesn't go into these conspiracy rabbit holes nearly as deep as we do, they'll hear us and like, these guys are batshit crazy. What is wrong with them? These guys need to be interned. And I guess I'm at the point where I don't give a shit what people think. The name of my show is What is Truth Podcast, because I legitimately want to know what is truth. I'd rather believe in something that is horrible, uncouth, unpleasant, but it's reality, than some bullshit fairy tale. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's a tough road to travel. And that's just the way I navigate it these days, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think the conspiracy first mindset, and I'll give Alex Tiscaria the credit for that, because he always says, that's what he calls our community. He's like, our mindset and the way we look at the world is conspiracy first, right? And really all the uncovering of things have led us to the logical conclusion that it probably makes more sense to think everything is a conspiracy first, then maybe if you uncover that it's not, then that's okay. But it makes more sense that, hey, if your significant other keeps cheating on you and keeps lying about cheating on you, maybe every time something suspicious happens, it's safe to say that, you have the right to like accuse them of maybe lying again or cheating again. So I think that's absolutely a mindset that anybody who's been down enough rabbit holes will eventually get to. It's like when you've been lied to so many times over and over and over again, and every historical event, every historical figure, every historical assassination, every historical whatever becomes suspicious in regards to what the mainstream story is of the event. Then like, why not question absolutely everything? But I think, like you said, the thing that's very difficult for some people too is sometimes we mold a worldview, and if something that we uncover doesn't run parallel with that worldview, sometimes we want to resist admitting that. Sometimes we want to say, hey, you know what, like maybe, maybe that this is a conspiracy. I haven't found the conspiracy here, or there's not a lot of evidence, but I'm going to believe it's. And I think that's the hardest part for people in our community to do is like, hey, if you have a conspiracy first mindset, that's completely okay. And I think that's like I said, the logical way of looking at things after a while. Also, if there's not one, it's like, how do we pump the brakes and be like, okay, before I go all in on this, I need some dots to connect. I need some evidence. There's a YouTube channel called Rock Feed, and they just released a video last night or yesterday that I watched about Dave Navarro, because something that's been going on, and this is related, believe it or not, to what we're talking about, but Dave Navarro, famous guitarist, friends with the singer of Linkin Park and Soundgarden, two singers that had mysterious deaths. For the longest time, nobody would talk about it. Nobody said that there was any conspiracies there. The conspiracy was that they both were they had some childhood trauma, substance abuse issues, but both these guys became best friends because they connected with music. And I'm referring to Chester, the singer of Linkin Park, and then the singer Soundgarden, Chris, having a brain fart, but everybody knows the singer Soundgarden. So they were, yeah. Do you know his name? I can't remember.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh my God, it's on.
Going over my head.
Yeah, I'm almost embarrassed. I don't know it. What the hell was it? Cheddar, Chris Cornell. That's right.
Chris Cornell. Yep.
Yeah. So both
like a stone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great song. But two like legendary singers. So a lot of times it's hard to believe that people you love and people you grow up adoring, that anybody could do something bad to them. You assume everybody loves these guys. And they both had really mysterious deaths. And then Dave Navarro came out recently and was talking about all these conspiracies, because it's since their suicides, quote unquote, similar to Kurt Cobain's suicide, quote unquote. And that's the thing. You want to talk about conspiracies. I mean, just the things that have been uncovered in the music industry of late. Now people are second guessing Michael Jackson's overdose, right? People, because of all he had the rights to the Beatles whole archive. He had all these like tons of money that like, this is like, you're a billionaire for life if you own those archives. I mean, those are songs and tracks that are going to be played till the end of time. So if you own that and you get money every time those tracks are played, you're a billionaire for life. And so there's a lot of money involved. And what people don't realize, when there's a lot of money involved, a life isn't worth that much. It's like they don't have any problem taking somebody out for a lot of money. I mean, they'll do it for a little bit of money. I always say, I'm like, mobsters have killed people for much less. And you think when you're talking about ridiculous amounts of money, they care about somebody's life or their family or anything like that. It's absurd. But Dave Navarro now kind of planted the seed to the public that like, hey, maybe there's something to this conspiracy, that what happened was that they were putting together a documentary, and they're putting together a documentary about, I think it was called The Silent Children or something like that. And it was about child trafficking. And before the documentary was released, and I guess he was like, Chester and everybody was kind of really quiet about this. And there's a quote that's going around that Chester told one of his sons that like, hey, I can't go public with what we're working on because they'll kill me. And this is Chester's son saying this, that he told, that his dad was working on this and he believes this was a conspiracy. So it's like in music, in politics, in all these things, like all of them at the highest level are scumbags. Like they're all, and it seems like if you go to the top point of every pyramid, if it's fashion, if it's politics, if it's science, if it's whatever, like look all these high ranked scientists that are going missing, right? There's like 10 or 11 of them now, all linked to like plasma and anti-gravity and reverse engineering UFOs possibly, and NASA hidden programs. I don't know if you've been following the story, but it's fascinating. And it's like, and then there was just not too long ago, and it kind of piqued my interest because I believe the scientist was Portuguese. So like a lot of people in the Portuguese Noticias were talking about it, and about this Portuguese scientist that was really intelligent, who was working at one of the Massachusetts, was it Massachusetts or Providence? One of the two. universities, either Boston or Providence. But there's this other guy who assassinated him, and nobody knows why. And it was like really mysterious. And then you have all these scientists now that are like having these mysterious deaths. And this kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you remember this. We've both been in the community for a while, so you might remember this. Remember when all those homeopathic doctors were going missing and dying for a while? It was like coincidence, 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 and it's like, okay, we're getting to a number that not too coincidental anymore. And it was like tons. And I actually had one. And I wish I remember his name, because I remember it kind of spooked me out a little bit. I booked a guest on my show, and it was like a Friday show, didn't show up, which is really, I mean, it's kind of common for comedians and musicians because they're not always the most on point. But for doctors, when I have doctors on, they're usually pretty good at keeping their appointments, because that's kind of what they do for a living, is keep their appointments. So they're very schedule oriented people. So it was a no show. Like, he just didn't show up, and I'm like waiting for him. And I'm emailing. I'm like, where are you, dude? I'm like, can't. And then didn't hear from him. Then Saturday, somebody from his office hits me up and says, hey, sorry to notify you that Dr. whatever passed away this weekend. I'm like, okay. And this was during the homeopathic doctor mysteries. I'm like, oh, I wonder if it's like related. I'm like, I don't know. I'll wait and see. It could be just, who knows, a super unfortunate thing. And then come to find out, he was one of those doctors who like they found in the woods with like some gun or something, and he committed suicide, and it was like super mysterious. And I was like, what? I'm like, wow, this kind of was hit close to home, because I was just going to talk to this guy. But my point is, like, all these things happen in all these worlds. And so you think about it, like every single industry you could think of, from like the light bulb, conspiracy, right, to the suppression of the electric car, to everything.
Dude, the suppression of silk.
Suppression of silk and hemp.
Yeah, the Chinese kept that shit a secret for centuries. When they figured out that you could get this fine silk from freaking worms, silkworms, and the Europeans were receiving these products from these faraway people that they had no idea even existed. And they were like, where is this material coming from? They kept that shit a secret for centuries. And that's how they monopolized the trade. That's how they became a prosperous nation. The Chinese entered their golden era, through the goods. Dude, it's the same shit over and over that gets repeated throughout history, man. And just a real quick thought, man. I've been coming to this conclusion the last few months now, that with all the propaganda that we get fed in constantly, with a lot of these things, we're given binary options. It's either this, the official narrative, or it's this conspiracy theory. Just the two main things. For example, Jeff Epstein. Jeff Epstein was either killed in prison or he hung himself. Binary options. And I feel like a lot of times there's like a third, fourth, or fifth options that are forbidden to talk about. You can't go there. If you try to say, Jeff, what about if Jeff Epstein was allowed to, they helped escape him. You know what I mean? Oh, no, you can't go there. And then we get these Epstein docs where they put in a fake body to distract the paparazzi, which lends credence to the whole body switching. And I've also talked about how Hillary Clinton's brother resembles Epstein's body a shit ton. And he just coincidentally died a few weeks prior to the Jeff Epstein death. So they could have easily used that body to swap out Epstein. But even the Charlie Kirk assassination, he was definitely killed by someone in the crowd, or this guy on top of a roof, with a folded over gun. I shot him 30-06, and he had a magic neck, and the bullet just stops at his neck. Didn't go through. And these are the only fairy tales you are allowed to believe in. If you suggest any other thing, you are the one that's crazy. You are batshit crazy. And that's another thing that drives me crazy, man. I encourage people to stop looking at things through the binary lens. If you are hearing this main thing being talked about and this other main thing, start looking at nuance. Maybe there's another reality to it. Maybe there's truths to both sides, and the reality exists somewhere on the third option or fourth option. You know what I mean? And that's the lens that I look at the world these days. I don't take anything at face value. I question it first, and I think that gets you closer to reality. And you have to remain flexible in your mind, Because like you said, you very well could be going down this rabbit hole and you could be dead wrong and being led further away. And I think that's all done by design too. There's no question that these intelligence agencies get into the conspiracy field, get into this alternative podcasting realm, and just flood it with bullshit. And that's the whole point. Let's throw as many of these shiny objects out there and let them go chase after it, which will obfuscate from the more truthful path or the reality in that matter.
Without a doubt. And I mean, the thing with the Trump thing is, I think why a lot of people in the community supported it. I don't think they supported him as a person, because I remember even when the first time he ran, I remember running into, because, you know, when people are running, I like to watch documentaries on them and do deep dives. And I ran into a documentary about, it was a golf course that he was building in Ireland. And there's this old like Irish family that wouldn't move, and they wanted to buy all this property, build this beautiful golf course, and they refused to move. And he's like, no, you know, our family lives here. I don't give a shit about your golf course. Like, we have a farm, like whatever, you know, like, and so the things that he did to this poor family, like he would right outside their property, where the golf course property, the new development was being done, he just would drop off like mountains high of gravel so they couldn't see anything. So they look out their window, they just see piles of dirt, and like just harass this guy to get him to sell. And I'm like, yeah, he's kind of a fucking asshole. I'm like, he's kind, you know, I'm like, that's kind of a dirtbag thing to do. Like, you know, where I live in Western Massachusetts, there's a lot of construction companies. A lot of them are like Italian and Portuguese. And so you hear a lot of stories about construction companies. And one thing you would hear over and over again is how Trump was like one of the worst people to work for, that like how many subcontractors he wouldn't pay. And I know of this trick, like he was accused of doing this trick that I know happens because it's happened to us, where you get you know, GCs do this all the time because they're scumbags. They'll, you know, a general contractor will find some reason not to fully pay you to save some money. So it's like they're making millions of dollars on a project, and then they'll be like, hey, I know, you know, those sidewalks you did, the lines are supposed to be every 5 feet. There's a couple spots it was like 4 3/4 or whatever. We're not going to pay you. It wasn't up to code. It wasn't done to spec. So we're going to deduct, you know, this amount of money. And you're like, what? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, oh, we talked to an inspector and he said we're going to do it like this or whatever. It looked, and no, you know, we're going to do, you know, and like all these little like scumbag ways of not paying the little guy. And you would hear these things about Trump. And listen, it's New York construction. I mean, you're linked to the mob. You know, they're all shady. I mean, construction just full of like shady scumbags. I mean, the big dig I mean, if people aren't familiar with this, it was literally the biggest construction job in all of the United States was the Big Dig in Boston. The amount of corruption and conspiracies that happened with that project, they literally would drop off. Like, so the job site would be people just playing cards. Like people just show up and hang out, drink, play cards, because there's all this money funneling to it that they were just taking their time. A material would get dropped off and people would just take the material and then bring it to their own personal homes or to other projects that that taxpayers were paying for. I mean, this stuff happens all the time. So to anybody who thinks Trump's like a good dude, like he's not there is no good dudes at the highest level, because, and this is just my personal opinion, I truly believe we live in a world that has been molded by psychopaths. And they're designed in a way, the way the pyramid works of like the elites and everybody else, is that to get to that elite level, you have to also be a psychopath. You know,
yeah.
Right? I mean, do you agree with that?
100%, dude, because people don't realize to get to these high levels, to become president of the United States, to be this big face on the Republican Party, Democrat Party, you've had to have done some fucked up shit. If you were on the up and up, no one would ever know you. You would be completely suppressed. They control the algorithms. They would never get any traction. And these psychopaths, you and I, And I would say the vast majority of people, we feel bad. We may do some fucked up shit from time to time, but most of us will eventually feel bad. Fuck, man, I really fucked that person over. I shouldn't have cut this person off. I shouldn't have done that. You know, we feel remorse. That's what separates us. Yeah. And these motherfuckers will send bombs and look at, oh my God, we just killed 1,000 people. It'll be like a video game to them. They will have zero remorse, give zero fucks for the amount of people that are, I mean, how many of these people, I mean, a lot of people right now are forgetting all the kids that are continuously getting bombed, not only in Gaza, but everywhere else around the world. In Sudan, all over where the American Empire fingerprints are at, but no one ever talks about them. No one cares. They're forgotten. But the way I look at it, every life is important, man. Just because these people they don't have a social media presence doesn't mean they didn't exist. These are real people, and they just get thrown to the wayside like our lives are more important than theirs. And that's the thing with these psychopaths that run us, like a Donald Trump, like even Joe Biden as.
Well, I don't think I don't even think they're the psychopaths that run us. I don't think the president.
No, they're puppets, man. They're puppets. Yeah. They're just following orders, but even these puppets are psychopaths. You know what I'm saying? Because in order to follow some of these fucked up things that need to carry out the agenda, you have to have no conscience. You know, you don't give a fuck.
Well, think about it. I'm sure you have people in your personal life, and I know people in my personal life that lie so often, even little white lies, that it literally has zero effect on them. I'm like, why do you even lie about that? Like, why?
Yeah.
It's like stupid shit. You're like,
it's fucking weird, dude.
Weird. Well, it's not weird because if you look into it, and I remember reading into this about I'm lying. I probably didn't read it. I probably heard it on a podcast. It sounds smarter when I say I read into it. I probably didn't read it. I don't read a whole lot. I listen to a lot. When you think about it, and it makes sense. So I remember hearing this psychologist, I don't know if it was scientist, psychologist, whoever, PhD was talking about this, about how like your neurons, like you do something, right? You might feel a little bit remorse, and then you do it again, then a little less remorse, then you do it again, and then it gets to a point where you become immune to it. It's no different than a police officer who goes to a crash, right? You go to a crash and you see freaking blood and like people stuck in a car. You know, your adrenaline's up high, you're panicking, your anxiety, whatever, and then little by little it becomes normal. Same thing with a surgeon, right? First time you cut somebody open, you're like, well, what the fuck? Like, this is the inside of somebody's body, you know, like,
yeah.
And after a while, it just becomes work. So I think all these elites, I think when it comes down to like maybe the first time they bombed somebody, they might be like, oh, kids died, that sucks. And then after a while, they're like, who cares? You know, like, I don't think and I think they become immune to it. That's why I think anybody who's been a lifelong politician, why do you think lawyers make such good politicians? So many politicians are ex-lawyers. Why?
Yeah.
Because to be a lawyer, remorse goes out the fucking window. It's like, who's paying me? Okay, yeah, you're the innocent party. You know, it's like that. That's how it goes. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. It's like whoever pays you is, and even if you know that the person you're helping to stay out of jail is a piece of shit or is probably wrong, you will do everything in your power. You will bend the rules. Why do you think that the law books are so complex and so many layers to things and so many exemptions and ways of looking at things and whatever? Because that's how you find the loopholes. It's like, if you make it really, really complex, you're like, well, you could interpret this way. You could interpret. And so that way, the rich and powerful, like you're basically you're only as innocent as the lawyer you can afford, you know?
Yeah, dude.
If you can afford a great lawyer, you'll be innocent. If you can't afford a great lawyer, I know people who have like 5, 10 DUIs still have their licenses. I know, so, you know, 1 or 2 people that like, hey, they fucking just had one, they weren't even drunk, but they were just a little over the limit. You know, they, bad luck, got pulled over and then lost their license. And now they're in debt and they had to go to classes and they lost their job and all these bad things happen to them. But then I know the pieces of shit who get, you know, pulled over all the time, but because they can afford a good lawyer, get out of everything. So it's like, justice is one of the many illusions. Like, there is no such thing as real justice, because the truth is public opinion is the real justice. Like, hey, you know what? I don't give a fuck what that judge says. We all know OJ did it. Like, it's like that's where the real justice is, because the justice system is all. I remember when I had Jesse.
It's corrupt as shit, bro.
When I had Jesse Ventura on my show, he talked about how And I thought this was actually a really good idea. He was talking about how he wanted to I remember he went into like a room where they had like all these law books, and he's like, these are all the laws in my state. He's like, this is fucking crazy. He's like, so every year he wanted to remove a law, like get rid of one and just like minimize it, make it less complex. And I don't know who was in the room with him, his assistant or whoever, and or whoever the guy was that worked on his team, and he's like, Jesse, by the time you even get this thing in motion, you'll be long gone. He's like, once a law's on the books, it's on the books for life. He's like, he's like, it's impossible to get it off the books. So it's like, we've created a system where like literally if you get on their target, they'll find a way to lock you up. They'll find a way. There's that book, was it like Commit 10 Crimes a Day or something like that? Like how like there's so many crimes or there's so many laws that like literally if the government wanted to, they could find enough things to charge you. Even the most innocent person, even the most just person who's just going along their lives and aren't doing any harm to anybody, they could find something to to get you in their grips and fuck you for life.
Yeah, man. And that, I mean, even this whole thing turns into philosophical questions, like this whole thing about laws and stuff. I've been studying philosophers for a while now, and I like a lot of these older philosophers, but I like a lot of Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche's one of these super misunderstood philosophers. A lot of people on both sides of the ideological spectrum, whether they're left or right, will talk shit about Nietzsche. And I think because they don't fully understand what he was trying to get at. The more I read his work, Beyond Good and Evil is an amazing piece of work. His whole concept of the Übermensch has been distorted by people that think, oh yeah, this fueled Nazi ideology. Dude, if you paid attention to Nietzsche, he was all against herd mentality. So how does that go with Nazism? Nazism was, oh yeah, we all believe this, we all believe that. Nietzsche was against that shit. He was about making your own morality. He also pushed forth the thought of eternal recurrence, which I found super powerful, because in the thought experiment of eternal recurrences, let's say you go to bed tonight and a demon shows up randomly at your bedside and says, hey man, you ain't waking up, you're gonna die. How do you feel about that? And here's the thing, from this point forward, you're gonna live life again in exactly the same manner. The highs and the lows of your life. When you felt the most happiness, you're gonna live that again. But also when you felt the most depressed and most hurt in your life, you're gonna live every single thing over and over again. And you're gonna die just like you're gonna die tonight. And how do you feel about that? Most people would probably cringe at that, and most people get upset at that thought experiment. Wait a minute, I have regrets in life. I wish I could have done this. I wish I could have done that. Fuck, I don't know if I could do that over and over and over again. And Friedrich Nietzsche says, if you can get to a point where you can tell that demon and say, fuck yeah, I'm fucking down to do this shit over and over again, you reached what he called amor fati, the love of fate, that you will embrace the goods and the bads of life, and you will love it at a maximum. And what I take out of it, some people have a hard time with that thought process, but what I take out from that is, if you are living a life that is somewhat uncouth, somewhat, you're doing some fucked up shit currently, you're cheating, you're lying, you're deceiving loved ones, or you've done some wrong and you haven't apologized for it, you have that's the shit that's going to weigh in your mind and going to say, no, I don't want to do this over and over again. That's what's going to eat at you. But if you correct that shit, you're like, damn, maybe I need to start correcting this. Maybe I need to start living better. Then you will embrace the whole of your life, and you will gladly say, I accept to do this shit over and over and over again. It's a powerful thought experiment that Nietzsche proposed, and I've really embraced that, man, because it makes you look at where you are currently at. I've met people, I've known people that I thought I knew, and then you catch them in some massive fucking lies. The evidence is right here. You can't fucking explain this away, and they still lie to you. Like, what the fuck? And it fucks your worldview in many ways. You're like, damn, if this person that I trust is capable of this, what about this fucking stranger or someone that I know very little about? And it kind of makes you paranoid in that regard. But from other philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, I did a show on Seneca. One, probably my favorite philosopher out of all the ancient ones, is that you learn to worry about only things that are in your control. and not worry about shit that's out of your control. If some random motherfucker that you know nothing about comes up and tells you, "Hey, you suck," or you this, or bad mouths you, let it slide, man. Because I don't know anything about you. Why do I care what you think or whatever? I have no control over that. Even with your own loved ones. I know a lot of times we want people to love us, especially our loved ones. We want them to, but we can't mold them to be something, we have to allow them to love us and only worry about what we can do.
Well, I say love is earned. It's not asked for. It's not given. It's earned, right? And
exactly.
Love is, a lot of times you can't force somebody to love you. What you do is, and it's same thing like what you were saying in regards to commenters, people who read comments and I stopped reading comments a long time ago, and every once in a while I'll see one and I'll give it a heart or a thumbs up because it might be something positive, and I'll look real quickly and I'm like, oh, okay, let me just read the one that caught my eye. But I don't go through, I remember talking to Clint Russell from a Liberty Lockdown podcast, and he's like, oh, I read all of them. And I'm like, yeah, I guess, but I'm like, that's a lot of wasted time. I don't know. I mean, I'd rather just focus on what I enjoy and what I do. And like I always tell people that, and we do live in a very anxious world that causes and creates anxiety in most people. And if you can't handle it, if you spend too much time thinking about like World War III, viruses, all these things that they keep trying to feed you to get you scared, then you can live in a constant state of anxiety. And I tell my daughter, because sometimes she after she went back to public schools after COVID, because we homeschooled for a little bit, she had like one year where she had like a bit of anxiety, a lot, and she even came home from school a few times. And I kept telling her, I'm like, listen, anxiety is focusing too much on the future. Depression is focusing too much on the past. I'm like, happiness is being in the now. And, it's like that quote, right? It's called the present because it's a gift. Like, be in the now. Enjoy the now. Don't overthink the future. Don't spend too much time pondering on the past. We can learn from the past, but don't spend too much time pondering on it and being hard on yourself. Just focus on like, what can I do now? And let me learn from those mistakes. And that's kind of what you were saying. It's like, if you have to relive your lowest moments, like don't be afraid of that, but embrace it. Embrace and say,
learn from it.
Yeah, because, so I coach basketball and soccer with kids, and I say it all the time. I'm like, listen, sometimes people think I'm a tough coach because I will force you to have to be honest with what your flaws are and what we need to work on. But I'm always like, we can't learn from our mistakes if we don't admit we make them. I'm like, it starts off with first admitting that, like, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm not the best 3-point shooter. Maybe I shouldn't be shooting threes every time I touch the ball. But I'm like, it's okay. You're really good at these other things, or we can work on it, and then eventually you will be good, so it's like, you can't live in this illusion that like, I'm always right, my significant other's always wrong, I'm never, and that's self-reflect. And that's why philosophy is so important. And I've always been huge into philosophy. I mean, when I first got into conspiracies and podcasts, I actually saw a lot of parallel between philosophy and conspiracies, because they both did and it's funny because I feel like you're one of the few people who actually connect the two, because a lot of people in our community don't really talk about the connections between the two, but they both are similar because they both do a similar thing. They say everything isn't always what it seems, and there's a lot of more questions than there are answers. And that's what I love about philosophy. That's what I love about conspiracies. That's what I love about, like, our journey in trying to figure out what the fuck do we live in? What is the purpose? What is the meaning of all this? What is the origin of man? What is our personal story as humans? Like, all these things of like us just trying to figure it all out. And I think both will help you, right? Will help you get out of that bubble and ask those bigger questions, which I think are important.
Yeah, I mean, Seneca, like I told you, is probably my favorite of the philosophers I've looked up. And he was born around, he's like a Jesus contemporary. Around the year 0 is when he was born. And so you can find the letters to Lucilius in modern English, the modern English translation. And when you listen to this, sometimes I caught myself like, God damn, this dude wrote this shit 2,000 years ago, because it relates to today's world, man. He was talking about the corruption of the elites, and Seneca was an elite himself. It is estimated that he probably owned half of Rome, and he was the tutor to Nero. And that little fact right there is what some people will hold against him. Well, look, he tutored Nero. Look how Nero turned out. You can't really help what a kid is gonna, the decisions they're gonna grow up, when they grow up and do later on. You can only tutor them, as best as you can. But Seneca's story is fascinating, because a lot of his letters that he was writing to his homeboy Lucilius was when he had got exiled to an island, and he was there all alone. So he's just trying to stay in touch with the world. And it must have been a weird situation for him, because he was wealthy as hell. He owned shit tons of villas in Rome, all over the empire, tons of money. Now he's exiled. He ain't got shit. He probably has to forage and find his own water. So that, I'm sure that helped to humble him in many regards. It's probably unfathomable to imagine how much wealth he had, but to have that kind of money, and now you're in an island, you don't have nothing, and now you have to think. Now all you have on your hands is to philosophize, and that's where some of his greatest works came out of. And he talks about how you can get corrupted being with a lot of people. And so it's important to surround yourself with people that have good values, good stuff that you jive with. Because if you start hanging around, and it sounds like common sense, but he was writing this 2,000 years ago. This is what I mean. It relates to today. If you start hanging out with dudes that just do drugs and do stupid shit, you're probably going to be doing drugs and stupid shit as well. You know what I mean? Being in crowds with people greatly influence you. We all heard, since we were kids, heard about the thing about peer pressure. You know what I mean? And that's a real thing. In one of his letters, he's talking about going to the Coliseum and watching the games, watching the gladiators. He's talking about how bloody and gory it is, and how the people in the crowd are cheering it on, and it sounds like a football game, like a modern day football game. They're watching it. And he goes, man, sometimes I've gone to these games and then I'm like, kill that motherfucker. And he starts jiving with it, and he's like, damn, dude, this is corrupting me. I can't do this shit no more. You know what I mean? And so the cool thing about his philosophies, he's telling you his fuck ups and what he has learned from it. Instead of saying, oh yeah, we just need to be grandiose and everything, like pontificating like they're angels. What I loved about Seneca was talking about how he's human and he fucks up constantly, but he's trying to become a better individual. So again, because he was an elite, in some of his letters, he's talking about what power does to people, how power corrupts. And to hear him talking about it as someone that was an elite during this height of Rome, to get his take on it is super powerful, man. And like I said, I don't know, man. I encourage everyone to listen to, if you're into philosophy, listen to Seneca's letters to Lucilius, man. So much gold, and it does connect to conspiracies as well, man. When you brought it up, I'm like, damn, I've never heard anyone really make that connections. It's awesome to hear that.
Yeah, that's why I've had so many philosophers on the show. Michael Millerman was one of the most interesting people I've ever talked to. He's the one who translated Alexander Dugin's books to English for the first time, and then got kicked out of his university because of it. But when he talks about mysticism, and he talks about all these just, modernity and all these really interesting thinkers, and, that's the thing about philosophy that's so fascinating is, like you said, even though technology changes, human tendencies and desires and wants and power corrupting and all these normal things have been around forever. And I always tell people, I'm like, if you watch House of Cards, and then if you watch Game of Thrones right after, you remove the dragons, I'm like, it's the same story told.
It's the same shit, dude.
Same story. It's all about, power struggles. It's about backstabbing. It's about human flaws. It's about cheating, lying, deceiving. I mean, That's the world we live in. And that's been the world we live in since the beginning of time. I've said this on my show multiple times, but the elite, we talk about the devil, the greatest trick it ever played was convincing you he doesn't exist. I always say, I'm like, that's the trick that the elite played, because the best trick that the elite ever played was convincing you they don't exist. So since the beginning of time, there's always been peasants, and like you obviously you go way back in history, like whatever time period you're talking about, besides now, there's always been elites. There's been elites,
Yeah.
everybody else. And I'm like, in America specifically, because we have a democracy and that's what we call it. And even though, even democracy, which I love about philosophy, even democracy gets questioned, right? Like, what was that quote? Democracy's two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner. That's democracy,
Well, the Republic, dude, the invention of the Republic. When you go back to the origins of Rome, when it was just a bunch of nomadic peoples fighting in that area, they obviously, the ideas from the Greeks came over to Rome. I mean, they're not far away from each other, but the Romans were intermingling with the Greeks, and then the thought of the Republic, which came out of, from the Greeks, came over to the Romans. And that is one of the greatest tricks of all time, bro. That's one of the greatest conspiracies of all time, because everyone talks about, oh yeah, we live in a democracy, the Republic for which it stands, And when you really look at why the Republic was instituted all those years ago in ancient Rome, it was to blame shift, in other words, because when shit went bad, when they had a monarch and the economies went to shit, or they got invaded and they got fucked up, it was you. You're the king. You let us down, you goddamn king, stupid fucking king, blah, blah, blah. Boom. By making a republic and telling people, hey, peasants, vote for this candidate. Vote for this and therefore, and then when shit hit the fan, like let's say something happened, some catastrophe happened, you could say, well, you should have voted for this other party. You know what I mean? That's the problem. It wasn't the elites running the show that were the problem. It was the party that you voted against. We should have all voted for that. That's why the Republic was created thousands of years ago, to avoid blaming the elites. Obviously, in those old times, the elites was the king. The end all be all was the damn king. Everything. So the good and the bad all fell upon the king. By instituting a republic, when shit went down, you just blame, well, you should have voted harder for the other side. And today, what's happening? We voted for Trump, because Joe Biden was this and that, and now he's failing us. Now they're gonna try to make a shift. Oh, well, maybe we should have got Kamala Harris, or that's gonna be the push. And I'll just finish out by saying this is the trick that has been played for thousands of years ago, and it's clever because people still fall for it today, man. Watch, after the Trump, to me, it's all a setup. He's doing these stupid moves, dressing like Jesus and calling himself a doctor. And it's going to be a setup to put in a Kamala Harris, a more progressive, more radical. And the pendulum is constantly, if it swings this way, it's going to swing even harder the next time around. And it's all done by design, man. But people fall for this left-right bullshit over and over again, man.
Well, I think Mossad's running our government, and I think it's been running our government probably for a long time. And I think no matter who's in power, there's a reason why they could disagree on absolutely everything. Politicians can, even though that's a charade and illusion anyways, but even publicly, they'll pretend they disagree on things. But the one thing they always agree on is Israel's foreign policy and whatever they want to do. And it's like, it was so obvious that they have incredible influence. I mean, Bibi Netanyahu is one of the most corrupt politicians in human history. I mean, the Bibi files, I know Tucker kind of put some attention on the documentary, but I talked about the documentary even before that, because what happened around, I believe it was around October 7th, the documentary was out on Amazon Prime. It vanished from the face of the earth. All of a sudden, it said, if you looking for it, it would say it wasn't available in your country. People would take screenshots all over the world, and it basically wasn't available on planet Earth. It wasn't available in any country, and they suppressed it because when people were asking questions about October 7th being a false flag, or maybe them letting it happen, or maybe there's a standout, they didn't want this documentary circulating, because if this documentary was circulating while people were asking these questions, you'd be like, well, this is possible because Bibi seems to be a really big piece of shit. So they suppress that. When you look at just like the way that he's the only politician that comes to America, and every politician like just kind of kneels to him, like they bend the knee to him, and he just has such control. And when you look at like just historically, Israel, I mean, you can go back to, and I actually had this conversation with John Kiriakou after my podcast. I was telling him about the American Conspiracy, Octopus Murders. I had the filmmaker on, Monica co-host with me, and really James Corbett was the only one who I think that I knew of that really did like videos and a really short, good documentaries on Danny Castellero and the Promise software and all that story. But I was telling John, apparently John said, and I can't remember if he said this on my show or after the show, but we were emailing back and forth, and he was saying how he knew some of the people who were in the American Conspiracy documentary, and he knew some of them were full of shit. So he hesitated to watch it. I'm like, no. I'm like, this is interesting. And it's not just interesting. It links to Epstein, which John Kiriakou gets asked a lot about. I'm like, because Maxwell was involved with the Promise software and the spying software. And people don't know this, but like Ghislaine Maxwell's father, when he died, every prime minister that was still alive of Israel went to his funeral. It was a huge event. There was a quote that went around from one of the prime ministers saying that the world will never know how valuable or how important he was to Israel. Mossad has a long history of manipulation, spying. I mean, in Iran for years, if you're a nuclear scientist, and that's why I think it could be linked to the nuclear scientists and plasma scientists and scientists that are going missing or having mysterious deaths in America. There could be something there. I haven't found the connection yet, but I'm still looking, and I'm still keeping my my mind open to the idea that, similar to the Iranian nuclear scientists that never made it to the age of 30 because Mossad would just take them out, and everybody knew this. I mean, everybody in Iran knew that all these scientists were dying, and it was Mossad just taking them out. And now you're seeing a similar thing in America, and some people believe that some of them that are being kidnapped and not being found, or is actually Mossad taking them to try to obviously find out what they're working on and what technology they're working on, and try to get some of that American technology that they're working on in the highest levels. So that's the thing people have to realize. It's like, dude, there's so many layers to this, and there's so many groups of people who have their own incentives and have their own purposes and their own plans for the world. And we're being pulled in every direction. And sometimes it's not just one conspiracy, it's many conspiracies, layers of conspiracy. I mean, it's like the JFK assassination. I mean, you can go just down a billion rabbit holes, from like the Alan Dulles thing, right? Then you go down to Alan Dulles rabbit hole and his link to all the coups, when he was at the CIA in like Guatemala and all these Latin American countries, and his brother, Alan Dulles' brother, and then the fact that he got fired after the Bay of Pigs, then he gets put on the Warren Commission. You can go down the Jack Ruby and the Oswald rabbit hole. You can go, I mean, all these interesting things, the Israel rabbit hole with JFK. And Dr. Jack Cruz talked about that when he was on my podcast. And so it's like all these rabbit holes, and it's layers and layers and layers of manipulation. And that's why like philosophy is so interesting, because even what philosophy does, right? Like, so we have a understanding of reality, and then you'll read some philosopher who's like, like, what is real? What is, like they'll start asking these questions. You're like, you're right. Like, we don't really know these things. These are theories. I remember when I had the doctor from the telepathy tapes on, she talked about this, and I'm so glad somebody who worked at like Harvard with her credentials and resume said this out loud. She's like, scientists will literally come up with conclusions for things they can't explain. They'll come up with theories for things they can't really explain. So black matter, it's almost like SIDS, right? SIDS is a perfect example of it. What is sudden infant death? I remember the first time I heard the term, I'm like, what's sudden infant death? And then they're like, oh, it's when an infant dies suddenly. I'm like, okay, but what causes it? They don't know. I'm like, how does that make sense to you? I'm like, so you literally come up with a scientific term, so the average person thinks there's some reasoning, some logic behind this word, and that we have some understanding of what's going on, when the truth is it's a made-up term for literally what could be anything, possibly even a vaccine-injured child, right? Somebody who has adverse reaction. So anything you want to cover up, anything that you can't explain, you come up with a term to make you still sound like the expert, because you don't want the expert sound like an idiot, right? If I just say, we don't know what happened. And then it happens over and over again. You're like, yo, how the fuck do these doctors and pediatricians not know what's going on to these infants that are dying? But if you call it sudden infant death, it's like, oh, okay, no, they kind of understand. They're the experts. They're saying it's so. It's like it's always this facade of knowing more than you, right? And like you said it, and I said it all the time, I'm an idiot too. I'm a construction worker. You know, we have the benefit of talking to really smart people, but sometimes being an idiot is beneficial because I'm not afraid of saying, hey, I know you're telling me this is supposed to make sense, but it's not making sense to me. And I don't think it's fully because I'm an idiot. And maybe it is, but because I am an idiot, I'll dig a little deeper and try to explain, like try to understand it. And I don't have this respect for your resume to a point where I'm just going to accept whatever the fuck you say. And like, I think a lot of people go up into educational ladder and get a PhD and they become experts and they become, you know, they have these resumes because they're experts and they people give them a certain amount of respect. I feel like they end up doing the same, right? Where like, well, if he's an expert in this field, then he has to be right. And if he's an expert in this, why do you think they hated Graham Hancock so much? I mean, he was a guy who was literally just asking questions about ancient history and ancient mysteries in the origin of man, and he got so much backlash. I mean, like, this guy's not a threat to society. He's not like telling you to not vaccinate your kids, like, you know, like a Wakefield or somebody else who's been, you know, suppressed. It's like, why? And it's like, oh, I get it, because the experts didn't like that somebody who didn't go through the indoctrination of college and the university was asking questions and questioning the information that made them the expert. Because once the information that makes you the expert turns out to be bullshit, then who are you? Now your identity is lost, right? Like, who am I? Like, now you're saying I'm an expert in this field, but now it's been uncovered that my field is like not very accurate, and there's some holes in the theories that I've adopted to be true. Now I'm in a internal dilemma, and I think that causes a lot of the issue too. And this is, and again, goes back to philosophy. What does philosophy do? Makes you question yourself. Who am I? Why do I do things? What's my true motives? Why do I believe things? Right? Like, those are all.
What's the purpose of it all?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's crazy because sometimes people, when they find out I'm not religious, I don't have any religious leanings, like, and I tell people I don't accept the creation story at all. So you believe in the Big Bang Theory? No. I don't believe in that at all either. So I'm in this this is what I kind of remember I talked about binary thinking. It's like you either have to believe in the Big Bang Theory or the creation story. And it's like, you only have those two. Now, what if I don't want to accept either of them? What if there is something out there? Maybe it's God. Maybe there is no God. I'm open to it all.
Anunnaki. Maybe it's Anunnaki.
Who knows? Like, I did a show on the Epic of Gilgamesh, so I gave you the story of the Epic of Gilgamesh with my cursing, you know, my crass style, and people really, really enjoyed it because, you know, I listened to the whole story several times over and over. So I just sat there in front of a microphone, drank some beers, and spat out the story. But I've enjoyed listening to these ancient writings, these historical texts. I listened to the account of Herodotus. He's known as the father of history, who went to ancient Egypt. So he was there in ancient Egypt. He's talking about how the Egyptians went about their daily lives, what kind of practices. And to hear this account from someone that was in Egypt walking around 500 years BC, to me is incredibly fascinating. And I'm hearing all these ancient accounts. I listened to the travels of Marco Polo and how he's going from point A to point B, meeting all these different peoples with different cultures. I listened to Ibn Battuta, another guy from Morocco that also traveled the world in the 1300s, and he's coming across this empire and that civilization, and hearing how they viewed their world at that point in time, you know, like, oh, like, for example, Herodotus, going back to Herodotus, who was in Egypt, he was talking about the Egyptian gods. And now we can go in hindsight and say that the Greek mythology was heavily influenced by Egyptian mythology. But at the time, this is Herodotus, he's really believing in the god Heracles and you know, all those Greek gods. In his mind, it's real. It's his reality. And you can tell he's perplexed. Like, man, these Egyptians also have gods, and theirs gods seemed actually a lot more ancient than ours. And he can see it, he's visualizing, he's talking about it, but it's hard for his mind to comprehend that maybe the Egyptians have a more a history that goes even further than the Greeks of his time period. You know what I mean? And it was hard for him to conceive this, even though he was pondering it. And so this is how I see a lot of things today. I think most people don't care about times of the past, even from 160 years ago, let alone things from 2,000 years ago. And I think with a lot of people going around, what do you notice whenever you're outside in public? People are heads down on their phone, just scrolling. You know, that's it. Boom, 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 boom. And we are being super dumbed down. I do believe it's done by design. But what if the world were to end today? How many people would know how to do a simple task of skinning an animal to cook? Very few people could probably do that. How many people could probably go out and catch some fish? Very few people could do those basic things. How many people could weave a fucking blanket? These are things that the ancients did that a lot of times people will have probably think, oh, they were primitive. They didn't know this. They didn't know that. They knew how to find medicinal plants, you know, to heal themselves from ailments instead of relying on some fucking pharmaceutical pills that are mass produced. The ancients knew a lot of shit, man. They knew a lot of stuff, but we dismissed them, you know? And I guess the more I read about these ancient writings, their mythologies that they viewed as real, the more I realize that they are no different than us today. Yeah, we have our cell phones. Yeah, we have our Wi-Fi's, but mentally they are very similar to us. You brought up Game of Thrones and some modern day
House of Cards,
and how it really is the same. You know, where I remember when I think about slavery in the South in the 1800s, I would often hear people say, well, it was a different time. You know, people thought differently and it was okay. After reading Seneca, who wrote 2,000 years ago, and how the Romans were practicing slavery, and Seneca was like, dude, yeah, we have slaves, but you need to treat your slaves like humans, bro. Like, you shouldn't beat them. They're just, I mean, what if someone conquered us, Romans? Yeah, we're on top of the world right now, but what if some nomads came in and conquered us? We would be their slaves. Would you want to get beat? And this is Seneca writing it 2,000 years ago. So when I hear people say, well, you know, the 1800s was a different time, you know, we got to cut them some slack. Fuck that, dude. They were the same as us, man. It's just the decisions that we individually take. Are we going to let society dictate that this is acceptable, morally acceptable? This is what Nietzsche was bringing up as well. Nietzsche was saying, screw the herd mentality. You have to make morality within yourself. And that sounds like a fanatical, crazy thought process, especially if we're talking about the psychopaths that run us. You don't want them to make it, you know, dictate morality. But the average person that does have empathy, that does think, make morality within yourself. Screw these ancient religious texts. Screw what modern text tells us what is right. Yeah, if we're look what the government was telling us just a few years ago with these vaccines. Take these vaccines, you're gonna kill grandma. That was more morally the right thing to do, that government was telling us to do. And Nietzsche would have argued against that. He said, now fuck that shit. You have to do what's right. Create your own morality. Don't let other people influence you that this is right and wrong. You assess it for yourself. Take it piece by piece, do your research, and come up with your own morality, man. And this is something that has really hit me lately. Like, I don't give a fuck what the masses are saying about this or the masses are saying about that. I'm going to listen to it all. I'm not going to discard. I'm going to take it all in and then make a decision. Okay, is this feasible? Is this logical? Does this make sense? Because unfortunately, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, we're getting inundated with so much bullshit, man. It does make it hard to decipher what's actually going on, what's reality, and so on and so forth. I mean, look at the Iran war. I don't know what your thoughts are, but without getting too much into it, one of the first things I did when I heard that we were going to possibly be getting into a war with Iran, I took Iran, boom, boom, boom. How did Iran handle COVID? And the WHO has this big piece. Iran did great stuff with COVID. They vaccinated their populations. They engaged in lockdowns. I'm like, bam, man. So I haven't looked into this whole Iran war bullshit in depth. I get little bits and pieces just to stay in loop of what the masses are talking about, what people in alternative media are talking about. But as soon as I saw that, I'm already skeptical. I'm like, oh man, how do we know what is actually going on with the Iran war? How much of it is theatrics? You know what I'm saying? Maybe there's a bigger agenda at play, and so they're just flexing their muscles and all this shit. And I'm not saying people are not dying. People die all the time in these wars, but these elites are always colluding as well. You know what I mean? You're trying to set up scenes for a more unified global new world order at the end of the day.
Yeah, Iran, I think they've wanted to bomb Iran for a long time. And I think finally they kind of pulled the trigger finally. But this goes all the way back to Operation Ajax. And, a lot of people know about the coups in Iran and the British Petroleum wanting to nationalize the oil fields there, and then Iran not wanting them to. And then they took down the government. And since then, it's been a bit chaotic. But the first casualty in war is always the truth. So you never know what to believe. And that's why sometimes when people, YouTubers or podcasters, have these hot takes on things, something happens and they immediately put out a show about it. And I'm like, God, don't you want to wait a little bit and just kind of take time to one, intake some information, but also reflect on that information. And I think that's important. And I mean, Iran, obviously, there's a long history there. So it's like what we do know is that Israel's been wanting to start a war with Iran forever. I mean, there's videos and videos and videos of politicians talking about it since like the 80s that Iran had 2 weeks to, make a bomb.
To make a nuke. Yeah, dude.
And there was what was that funny picture of like BB with like a cartoon bomb, and he was talking about like they're right here on the cartoon bomb, and then once it's like it's such a ridiculous thing. And but to go back to something you said about not being religious, I'm kind of the same way where, and you're right, you're highlighting a very valid point where it's like the illusion of choice. You have Pepsi or Coca-Cola. Oh, I have options. No, you have two. You have one or the other. And so it's like you're really not given any other options, because that means you would have to think and analyze things and just keep it simple. Like, I don't want you thinking. I would just want to keep it simple. It's black or white. These are two. It's blue or red. It's Republican or Democrat. Other countries have like 20, 30 political parties. In America, we have two, right? Keep it simple. And neither of them are ever consistent with their views. I say it all the time. I'm like, there's no way a thoughtful person who have critical thinking skills, who really think about these issues in a complex manner, can agree with either party all the time, because neither of them are consistent ever with their views. Like, I mean, the left is a perfect example with like my body, my choice, with abortion. But by the way, get the jab, you scumbag, and we're going to force you to do it. So it's like, there's no consistency. And this is, like you said, the dumbing down of people. It's like, keep it simple. You have two options. They force feed you the music that you like. They force feed you the fashion that you're going to like. It's like, you've already bought all the skinny jeans. Well, let's bring back bell bottoms, because we need you to buy pair jeans. So let's bring back bell bottoms, or let's bring back baggy clothes, right? Like, baggy clothes wasn't in for a while. It was really super skinny clothes. Now we'll do baggy clothes. Why? Why do you think
the fucking hairdos too, bro?
Everything's just recycled. It's like, nothing is original thought. I just did a great podcast with Dr. Jessica Rose and Dr. Tori Alexander. And, that's one thing we talked about in regards to AI. It's like, it can only recycle and build on things that have already been created by man. Like, it's not going to come up with, it might seem new and creative, and something that maybe was created by a imaginary person with imagination, I mean. But the truth is, it's not. It's just building off other people's imagination and other people's creativity. And we live in a post-truth world too. That's another thing you're kind of highlighting is the fact that you don't know what is real. You don't know. And it's completely healthy to think like, okay, this is what we're told about the Iran war. But there is a great book called The Trials of Henry Kissinger by Christopher Hitchens. And even though I wasn't a huge Christopher Hitchens fan, the book Actually, the documentary was really well done. If you guys can still find it, it used to be on Netflix way back in the day. But it's called The Trials of Henry Kissinger, and it goes through like every single foreign policy decision that was made while Henry Kissinger was a consultant for all these politicians. You know, he helped tons of politicians, Bush, Reagan. I mean, he was involved with all of them. And every single one was based on a lie. Like they uncovered, like, okay, this is the reason we went to war. This is the reason we sold to the public. And then afterwards, we uncovered it was really because of this. It was really because of that. It was really, and it's like over and over and over again. It's like every war is based on a lie. So it's like it's kind of safe to say that whatever we're told about this one, it's probably going to be based on a lie, and it's completely safe to question everything. And we really don't know, like, and then we always point, and this goes again to highlight another thing you keep saying about, like, you know, the binary way of thinking. There's always a good guy and a bad guy, right? It's always like Iran bad, America good. It's like you always have to have these binary. It's like, well, what if there's nuances to it? Well, what if like Iran's government's bad? Maybe they're not great people, but maybe it doesn't give us the right to bomb the country for regime change. It's like we don't have any problem with Sharia law and suppression of women in Saudi. Like we're okay with that. So it's like if it's about human rights, if it's about freeing the population, how come we're not doing it in other countries that play ball with us, that are friendly to us? It's like, okay, so it's not about human rights. It's not about freeing the population. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's like we only care about human rights when it's countries that we have other reasons to invade.
Yeah, it's when the propaganda, whatever the propaganda tide is going. Yeah, when I was going into the Mongolian Empire, the Chinese already knew about divide and conquer way back then. The Chinese, as they were, you know, they were probably the superpower at you know, in the 1300s, the world power. They had so much vast amount of money due to silk and their ability to keep it a secret. But one of their constant threats was nomads coming in for, you know, like the Mongols, you know, these are the prototype Mongols trying to come in and take over China. So what the Chinese did was they would hire some of these nomadic tribes, kind of like mercenaries, to fight off the other nomads. And then when those nomads got a little too powerful, they would start paying other motherfuckers. And so they were constantly making the nomads fight against each other to distract them from going into China. So that's some ancient divide and conquer strategies, if you really think about it that way. And look at the politics today, man. One of the things that has made me laugh is the Democrats are the super progressive, purple-haired liberals and whatnot. And they always defend like Muslims, you know, like, and I'm like, oh man, if one of you purple-haired homos was in the Middle East, you'd probably get knocked off of a building. But then the flip side to it is Muslims are super ideologically conservative. Same thing with Latinos. And yet a lot of the conservatives, not everyone, but there's conservatives that are kind of racist. Like screw them towel heads, screw them Mexicans, blah, blah, blah. But ideologically, they're more in tune with the family and have, you know, conservative, you know what I mean? It's bananas. As someone that doesn't ascribe to none of it, it cracks me up to see the dynamics at work. But I think it's done by design to keep everyone divided and pitted against each other. So there is no mass cohesion to have a mass revolt. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, I have two Guatemalan friends of mine, and they're super Christian, right? Super religious. And they're actually, one's kind of changed, but they were both, when I first met them, they were both like super Democrat, like pro-Democrat, Democratic Party, you know, always voted for the Democrat, was anti-Republican. And I'm just like, dude, you do realize, like, you know, the Republicans take away like immigration. In regards to like worldview and like morals, you guys are like literally the exact same people. I'm like, you have all the same moral compass, you believe in the same
family values and shit. Yeah, man.
A bit, you know, anti-gay marriage, pro, you know, the importance of family, religious, right? They go to church, they have religious values, all these things. I'm like, you take, and it almost shows like the power of propaganda, because it's like they're almost been tricked into voting against even their own beliefs. I'm like, you're literally voting against your own beliefs because the Democrats have told you that this is, if you're Hispanic or Latino or you're an immigrant of any sort, then we're the ones who are for you. Like, you need to vote for us, you know. And but like you said, but then the Republicans don't do a great job, because in many cases the, you know, the anti-immigration rhetoric that you get from that too. But I mean, I don't, again, that's another topic.
I was one of these libs, bro. I was one of the reason I voted Democrat was because when I thought about racist white people, I was like, and I was a kid. I was like, what is the common denominator when I get called a racial slur or get treated like scum? Oh, this guy would have voted for Bush. And so that's why in my mind, I'm like, oh, so there's the common denominator seems to be these guys are Republicans. So that's why these Democrats, my skiing homies, the hippies types, they're cool as shit. They accept me. They don't judge me. And so that's why as a young kid these days, I'm anti both parties. I don't give a shit about any ideological side. I think they're full of shit. But that's the reason why. But now that I see it, you're right, man. A lot of these Muslims or even, you know, Christians from Latin America, ideologically, they vibe more with what most of the Republican values are, but it's because of that other rhetoric that steers them away. And so you can use that same argument. The Republicans don't, you know, instead of capitalizing on it, they just they hit the hammer down, you know what I mean? But I think that's done by design. Again, it's not accidental, because if the Republicans lowered their guard a little bit, you know what I mean, they would bring in a lot of more people, you know what I mean? Oh, we're about Jesus, we're about this and that. They would bring in so much more people. But you have to have that nationalist element in there to keep everything pitted, you know what I mean?
Conquer. And you'll
divide and conquer, man.
You'll like this example because we're talking about kings and queens and ancient civilizations and historical figures. Somebody just said this. I can't take credit for this, but and I wish I remembered who said this, but it's a perfect way of putting it. They're like, when you're in your castle and you're a royal family and you look out to the peasants and they're fighting among themselves, you're living a good life, right? You everything's good. You're like drinking, having a good time. But when you look out beyond your gates on your castle and all the peasants are looking at you're in trouble, right? Because now
they're all unified. Yeah.
You know, and that's the world we live in.
Yeah, man. So I am black pilled because I think we're too far deep. The solution to all this would be if we were to drop all these stupid little things that we disagree with and realize that we are being duped, that we are being herded. COVID should have been a massive wake up. Why are you trying to inject me? Why are you offering me weed and cookies to get this experimental gene therapy? If most people would see that, you know, and this is what drives me nuts, Ricky, man. You know, in 2020, a lot of these libs fell for the vaccines. Yeah, we're going to go get vaccinated. We're going to go da-da-da-da-da. And a lot of these conservatives, Republican types were like, no, man, screw that shit. Even though Trump even called himself the father of vaccine, they just happened to ignore that. But they were against vaccines in large part. You fast forward to today, man. A lot of these libs are correct on Trump being a piece of shit and scummy. And a lot of these people that denied, you know, screw the government, you're not going to get me vaxxed or whatever. Now they're pro-war all of a sudden. Now war is okay. You know what I mean? It's like watching this pendulum swing back and forth, back and forth. This is why I don't ascribe to either side, man, because maybe right now one side is maybe dropping truth bombs, but then the pendulum's going to swing the other way. And now you're on the wrong side. So to avoid all that shit, I just stay away from it all and I just watch it from a distance. But, you know, for people that get bothered by me being black-pilled and shit like that, I want people to understand that I don't get sad about it. I've accepted that we're too far gone, but I'm just going to roll with the punches. I want people to understand, because people sometimes think, oh, you must be depressed, you must be paranoid and all that. No, hell no, dude. I just don't focus on all that shit. I think we're too far gone. But this is why I've been going down through the Mongolian histories, through Herodotus and all this other shit, man. I'd rather fill my mind with other valuable shit, man. I already know I'm being lied to. I know the shit that they want me to see on the news feed is to demoralize me, to scare me, more fear porn. And I refuse to engage with that. This is why I'd rather engage with more ancient works. What can I learn from it? And how can I become a better person? How can I become a better all-around individual at the end of the day? You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm black pilled as fuck, but I'm not one of these like I'm in a corner crying and scared, sucking my thumb. Nah, man, I'm good. I'm happy. I don't have any heroes. That's the difference. I don't believe in any heroes. I think we are it, and we just have to be awake to what's happening. So when they come in with vaccines again or whatever, no, fuck that. I don't want your fucking vaccines. Or they want to impose this on that. We're already in the know of it, but that doesn't mean to be sad and crying about it. You know what I mean? Try to make it as positive as can be, because that's the other takeaway as I go through a lot of these civilizations, the rise and fall of them. It happens all the time, man. Empires rise and fall over and over and over again. So it's nothing new, man. Yeah, it sucks when you read the accounts of people that have been on top of empires and hearing their accounts of when they got destroyed, when the Mongols came in, they thought they were invincible, and the Mongols came in and fucked them up. And now they're trying to pick up the pieces. It must have felt like the end of the world back then. But look where they're at now. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
It's I think this is a good way of ending it, because it's black pilled, but it's almost like somebody who is at peace with knowing that death exists and they're gonna die. It's like, okay, I understand the reality of things, but it doesn't sadden me. It puts me at peace.
Yeah, man.
And I think that's kind of what you're saying. But yeah, amazing conversation. I'm glad that we finally made this work. I think we both have like a little bit of a crazy schedule, so it's hard to make it work. But I'm glad we did, and it went down. This is what I love about just sitting down with people, is you never know where the conversation is going to go. And I think we went down some really interesting rabbit holes, and also highlighted some of the other really fascinating things that you're into, and from philosophy and ancient civilizations and Roman Empire and all that type of stuff. But let people know where they can keep up with your work, what social media platforms you're on. And by the way, congratulations on all your success. I remember when when you first started podcasting, I believe I was one of the early guests on the show, and just knowing you were such a fan of podcasters, and then for you to jump in and do it, and to grow to the level that you're at, where now you're talking about listeners and like comments, and you have this great following on quite a few platforms. It's awesome. It's awesome. I think people really connect with your honesty. I think people really connect with the realism, in a world full of fake shit. I think when you find a real one, you connect with it, and you find somebody who you're like, okay, maybe I don't always agree with them, but what I see is what I get. Like, I know who he is, and I think people appreciate that.
Yeah, man, I remember, dude, all those years ago, I had you on the show because, and I mentioned it there, I've mentioned it throughout, that you were one of the biggest inspirations for me doing my podcast. And coincidentally, dude, because of our crazy schedules, it just so happened that since we're doing a SwapCast, this will be $2.99 for me. So, it just so happened right before the cusp of 300. But when I first heard you, I heard you, I think James Corbett put you on a featured podcast, episode, and that's how I heard you, through the Corbett Report. And I heard your intro that really caught my eye, or my ear. Then I heard you, talking. I liked your tone of voice. I enjoyed it. And then you sounded, close in age to me. You were young and you were very, very inquisitive. And I was like, if he could do, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but I was like, if he could do it, I can do it too, because I love talking to people. I've always had that gift of gab, man. Ever since I was a little kid. I remember even as a little 15-year-old kid, I'd be hanging out with old school Mexicans drinking beer. And these guys were in their 30s and 40s. And then I'd be dropping knowledge like about lions and tigers and shit. And the old school Mexicans like, dude, this fucking kid knows a lot of shit, man. And I would just be, hanging out. And they're like, man, you could go on for hours and hours. And when I heard you on, man, obviously Joe Rogan is the main inspiration for a lot of people that end up doing podcasts. But after Joe Rogan, I would say you were the one that really, really made me start thinking, maybe I can do a show too, man. I love talking to people, man. And so I want to thank you, Ricky. We've been friends for many years at this point in time, and you were one of the biggest catalysts to get me here. And when we met, I had this huge rise, and then I got kicked off of YouTube, and it almost felt like I had to restart all over. So that I had a great reset, unfortunately. And luckily, man, people are vibing with me again. That's one of the biggest compliments that I get from people is that I don't know. People straight up tell me I don't agree with a lot of things you say, but I hear the sincerity that you really believe, and the passion that you aren't doing this for money or any of this shit. And it really is, man. I think it's a difference when you hear someone putting a show for commercial reasons, to become the next Joe Rogan or to reach big financial gains. And when someone is just doing it because they love engaging in the simple act of conversation. So I wanted to make sure I got that out of the way, man. You were the biggest catalyst, and I think it's awesome that we've been friends. And I think it's awesome that I made it on the Ripple Effect podcast because you were before I had my show, you obviously influenced me, but I was listening to a lot of your work and learning from you, how you talk to guests. I love the way you were a great listener and the way you took the conversation to different from here to point B, and I'm like, man, that's similar to how I do my shows. I may pick a topic, but then it may go from here to there. And that's what makes it fun for my audience. And I'm sure your audience over the years, that's another aspect that people enjoy, man. But if anyone's interested to my ramblings, the ramblings of a mad garbage man, you can find me by just searching What Is Truth Podcast by Wheezy. I do have like a fourth YouTube channel. I've been banned so many times, but I don't encourage you to follow me there. Follow me everywhere else, mainly Odyssey. Even if you never listen to me on Odyssey, if I ever disappear, let's say you follow me religiously on Spotify or Rumble or whatever. If I ever get nuked from there, I should still be standing on Odyssey. So that's first and foremost. And then you can find me on every other platform, man. And thank you so much, Ricky, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for the kind words. And I don't take offense to the fact that a idiot like myself motivated other people to be like, well, if this dude can do it, I can do it. Because I think that's also why people connect with shows like yours and mine, is because I think we are average people. We're average people who are just trying to hopefully do something fulfilling and important and giving something back to the universe of value. And so I think, yeah, without a doubt, it's a compliment. So keep up all the amazing work. I believe the next Union of the Wand, it might be Monday if you want to jump in, if you can. I'll send you a reminder and a link Monday and see if you can drop in. And hopefully we talk again soon. And I'll send you links to the show once it's up and live. Did you record it on your end, or do you want?
No, if you could send me the file, brother.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Yeah, no problem. And then we'll talk again. Thanks. Hey, enjoy your amazing. I'm sure what is amazing weather, and typically amazing weather in Florida. And we'll talk hopefully Monday.
Absolutely, my man. You take care.
Thanks, Wheezy. Take care. Gracias, amigo.
Curious what Wheezy thinks, because Wheezy usually comes at something, and I mean that with all due respect, Wheezy, because you usually are pretty good at coming at it from an angle that you have no political, leanings one way or the other, so you're a little bit more able to come at this from different angles.
And it was in one of those areas a couple of blocks away from the World Trade Center